The signal came from the dark space beyond Neptune, where no human ship had ever traveled. It was weak at first, just a small blip on the sensors of Odyssey Station, humanity's farthest outpost in the solar system. The technician who first noticed it thought it was a glitch. He ran the scan again. The signal was still there, repeating in a pattern that could not be natural. Within hours, the greatest minds on Earth were studying the transmission. They worked through the night, drinking cold coffee and rubbing tired eyes. By morning, they had translated enough to understand the message. It was a cry for help. A damaged ship. Dying crew. Survivors begging for rescue. The year was 2187. Humanity had spread across their solar system like seeds in the wind. They had built cities on Mars with red dust streets and glass domes that sparkled in the thin sunlight. They had carved mining stations into asteroids, pulling precious metals from ancient rocks. They had grown strong and proud, but they had never found proof that they were not. Alone in the universe until now, Admiral Chen Wei-Lin received the call while she was eating breakfast with her daughter on the orbital platform above Earth. She was a small woman with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded ships in the corporate wars of the 2150s. She had led rescue missions after the Great Quake of Mars. She was considered the finest officer in the United Earth Fleet. She read the translated message 3 times. Then she set down her tea and kissed her daughter goodbye. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. The debate was short. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. They had looked up at the stars and wondered if someone was looking back. Now someone was calling for help, and humanity would answer. It was not a question of whether to go. It was only a question of who would be first. Admiral Chen volunteered her flagship, the UES Mercy. It was the largest rescue vessel ever built. Painted white with blue stripes and equipped with the finest medical facilities in the solar system. 2 escort cruisers would accompany her, the Valor and the Shield. 3 ships, 800 crew members, all of them volunteers. The whole world watched as the fleet departed. Children drew pictures of the white ships flying toward the stars. Religious leaders spoke of divine purpose. Politicians made speeches about humanity's compassion. News channels ran constant coverage, counting down the days until first contact. What humanity did not know, what they could not possibly know, was that they were walking into a trap that had killed 47 civilizations before them, far across the galaxy. The Velthari Dominion watched the human fleet with hungry eyes. The Velthari were an ancient species. Their empire stretched across 1,000 star systems, built on the broken backs of conquered peoples. They had developed a method for expansion that was simple and effective. They called it the Mercy Protocol. The trick was beautiful in its cruelty. The Velthari would find a young civilization, one that had just begun to reach beyond its home world. They would study this civilization from the shadows, learning its languages and its customs. Then they would send a distress signal, a cry for help that any compassionate species would answer. The young civilizations always responded. They sent their ships racing toward the signal, eager to make first contact, eager to help. They left their home worlds undefended. They flew straight into the waiting arms of the Velthari war fleet. That it never took long after that. The Velthari would capture the rescue ships and extract all useful information about the target civilization. They would learn the locations of colonies, the positions of defense stations, the weaknesses in their weapons. Then the Velthari would descend on the home world like locusts, harvesting everything of value: technology, resources, population. The survivors became slaves. The civilization became a footnote in Velthari history books. And the Dominion grew stronger. Desic was the intelligence officer in charge of the human operation. He was tall and serpentine, with scales the color of deep water and 3 eyes that never blinked. He had personally overseen the destruction of 11 civilizations. He was very good at his job. He had spent years studying humanity through intercepted broadcasts. He had watched their entertainment programs, their dramas and comedies. He had seen how their heroes always hesitated before violence. He had seen how their stories always ended with forgiveness and understanding. He had concluded that humans were soft, emotional creatures who would be easy prey. He did not intercept their history documentaries. He did not learn about the world wars. He did not study the genocides, the colonizations, the atomic bombs dropped on cities full of civilians. He did not understand that human entertainment was often an escape from reality, not a reflection of it. This would prove to be a fatal mistake. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Mercy as her fleet crossed into unknown space. The stars looked different out here, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders. She was about to represent all of humanity to an alien species. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for rescue missions their entire careers. They had saved lives in asteroid mining accidents and space station fires. They were proud of what they did. They were ready to help, but Admiral Chun was not naive. She had lived through 62 years of human history. She had learned that hope should always walk hand in hand with caution. She had read the old stories, the myths and legends of her ancestors. She knew that monsters often wore friendly faces. Before leaving Earth, she had made a private call to Fleet Command. The conversation was encrypted and classified at the highest level. She had requested something that was not in the official mission briefing. Fleet Command had agreed. Now, as the Mercy flew toward the distress signal, 30 additional warships followed in the darkness behind her. They ran silent, their engines cold, invisible to any sensor. They would stay hidden unless they were needed. Admiral Chun hoped they would not be needed. She hoped that this was truly a rescue mission, that she would soon be shaking hands with grateful alien survivors. She hoped that humanity's first contact would be a moment of joy and wonder. But if it was not, if this was something darker, she would be ready. The fleet flew on through the endless night. The distress signal grew stronger. The trap waited. And humanity, without knowing it, raced toward its first test against the stars. The alien ship looked exactly as a damaged vessel should look. Its hull was burned and torn. Lights flickered weakly along its surface. It drifted without power, spinning slowly in the cold vacuum. To every sensor on the human fleet, it appeared to be dying. Admiral Chun ordered her ships to approach with caution. The Mercy took the lead position while the Valor and Shield spread out to provide cover. Medical teams prepared in the shuttle bays. Engineers checked their tools. Everyone was nervous and excited. This was the moment they had trained for their entire lives. The first shuttle launched from the Mercy, carrying a team of 12. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo led the medical unit. She was a calm woman with steady hands and a warm smile. She had saved lives in the worst disasters humanity had ever faced. She was ready to save alien lives now. The shuttle crossed the gap between the ships. The alien vessel grew larger in the viewport. Sarah could see the damage more clearly now. Scorch marks on the hull. Holes that looked like weapon impacts. A tragedy, she thought. She wondered what the survivors would look like. She wondered if they breathed oxygen or something else entirely. Then everything changed. The alien ship suddenly came alive. Its lights blazed with full power. Weapons that had been hidden in the hull slid into position. And all around the human fleet, space itself seemed to tear open as 12 massive warships appeared from nowhere. The Valkyrie had been cloaked, invisible, waiting like spiders in a web. Now they revealed themselves, and they were terrifying. Each warship was 3 times the size of the Mercy. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in weapons. They formed a perfect sphere around the human vessels, blocking every escape route. Admiral Chun felt her blood turn cold, but her face remained calm. She had prepared for many possibilities. This was one of them. A transmission came through, displayed on every screen in the human fleet. A Valkyrie commander appeared, his scales gleaming under harsh light. He spoke in heavily accented English, the words translated by computers that had been listening to human broadcasts for years. "Humans," the commander said, "you have been caught in the hunt. Your ships are surrounded. Your weapons are primitive. Your situation is hopeless." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live as servants of the Dominion. Resist, and you will all die screaming." On the bridge of the Mercy, silence fell. Every crew member looked at Admiral Chun. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All of them waited for her response. Admiral Chun stood slowly from her command chair. She adjusted her uniform. She took a deep breath. Then she opened a channel to respond. "I am Admiral Chun Wei-Lin of the United Earth Fleet," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "I have a counteroffer for you." The Valkyrie commander laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "A counteroffer? You have nothing to bargain with, little creature." "You misunderstand," Admiral Chun said. "This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. You have one chance to retreat. Leave now, and we will not pursue you. Stay, and you will learn why humanity survived its own home world." The Valkyrie commander stopped laughing. He stared at the screen with confusion. In all his years of hunting young civilizations, none had ever responded this way. They begged. They cried. They pleaded for mercy. They did not issue warnings. "You are surrounded," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "You are outgunned 13-3. You cannot possibly win." Admiral Chun smiled. It was not a warm smile. "I know something you do not know." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Battle stations. Execute Nemesis Protocol." The transformation was remarkable. The Mercy had been built to look like a rescue vessel because it was a rescue vessel. But humanity had long ago learned that those who help others must be able to protect themselves. Behind the white hull and medical bays, the Mercy carried secrets. Hidden panels slid open along the ship's surface. Railgun batteries emerged from concealment, each one capable of firing metal slugs at a fraction of light speed. Missile pods rotated into position, loaded with warheads that could crack open a moon. The rescue ship became a battleship in 30 seconds. The Valor and Shield underwent similar transformations. But their surprise was different. What appeared to be cargo containers on their hulls broke apart, releasing swarms of drones. Hundreds of small, fast attack craft spread out like angry bees, each one armed and autonomous. Humanity had fought itself for 10,000 years. They had developed weapons to kill each other with terrible efficiency. Now, those weapons had another purpose. The Valkyrie commander watched this transformation with growing horror. His intelligence had been wrong. Everything he knew about humans was wrong. These were not soft, compassionate creatures. These were predators who had merely learned to wear gentle masks. "Open fire!" he screamed. "Destroy them all." The Valkyrie ships attacked with overwhelming force. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked toward the human vessels. The trap that had killed 47 civilizations descended on humanity with full fury, and humanity fought back. The Mercy's railguns tore through the nearest Valkyrie ship, punching holes through its armor like needles through cloth. The drone swarm surrounded another warship, overwhelming its point defenses with sheer numbers before detonating against its hull. In the first minute of battle, 2 Valkyrie ships were reduced to burning wreckage. The Valkyrie adjusted their tactics. They were experienced warriors, and they had superior numbers. They focused their fire on the Mercy, trying to destroy the human flagship. The Mercy's shields flickered under the assault. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Crew members were thrown from their stations as explosions rocked the ship, but the humans kept fighting. They had been born on a planet that tried to kill them with ice ages and asteroids and supervolcanoes. They had survived plagues and famines and nuclear weapons. They did not give up easily. 2 more Valkyrie ships died. Then a third. The remaining 8 warships pulled back to regroup. Their commander was shouting orders, his scales flushed with rage and fear. Then his sensor officer said something that made him go very still. "Commander, we are detecting new signatures emerging from fold space." The commander looked at the tactical display. His 3 eyes widened. 30 human warships materialized in perfect formation behind the Valkyrie fleet. They were not rescue vessels. They were not disguised as anything friendly. They were weapons of war, and they had been following the Mercy in secret the entire journey. Admiral Chine's voice came through on an open channel. "I told you that I knew something you did not know. You assumed that because we came to help, we came without protection. You assumed that our kindness meant weakness." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as iron. "You assumed wrong." The 30 human ships opened fire. The Valkyrie fleet, caught between 2 forces, began to die. And in the burning chaos, the Valkyrie commander finally understood the truth. They had not caught humanity in a trap. Humanity had walked into the trap, knowing it was a trap, prepared for it, and turned it into something else entirely. They had turned it into a grave. The battle lasted 47 minutes. In the cold mathematics of war, it was not even close. The Valkyrie fought with the desperation of predators who suddenly realized they were prey. Their ships twisted and turned, trying to break through the human formation. Their weapons fired without pause, filling space with deadly energy. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never lost a battle against a young civilization. They lost this one. Admiral Chun commanded from the bridge of the Mercy, her voice calm and clear even as her ship shook from enemy fire. She had studied war her entire life. She had learned from the greatest generals in human history, from ancient strategists whose names were still spoken with respect. She knew how to break an enemy. The human ships worked together like the parts of a single machine. The reinforcement fleet hammered the Valkyrie from behind while the Mercy and her escorts pressed from the front. Drone swarms filled the gaps, attacking any ship that tried to escape. Railgun slugs punched through shields and armor. Missiles found weak points and exploited them. One by one, the Valkyrie warships died. They exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their crews vaporized in instants. They broke apart, spilling debris into the void. They tried to flee, only to be hunted down and destroyed. The Valkyrie commander watched his fleet crumble around him. He could not understand what was happening. His intelligence had been perfect. He had studied humans for years. He knew their entertainment, their music, their public speeches about peace and cooperation. How could creatures who made such beautiful art be so efficient at destruction? He did not understand that humans had always been both things at once. They wrote poetry about love while inventing new ways to kill. They built hospitals and weapons factories side by side. They were capable of tremendous kindness and terrible violence. And the only thing that determined which one you received was how you treated them. The Valkyrie had treated them like prey. Now they were learning the price of that mistake. The Valkyrie flagship tried to make a run for open space. It was the largest ship in the enemy fleet, its engines powerful enough to possibly outrun the human vessels. The commander ordered full speed, abandoning his remaining ships to their fate. Survival was all that mattered now. Admiral Chun saw the attempt on her tactical display. She opened a channel to Captain Rodriguez of the cruiser Defiance. "The flagship is running. I want it stopped, not destroyed. We need prisoners." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "Understood, Admiral. We will introduce them to the net." The Defiance launched a specialized weapon that humanity had developed during the corporate wars of the previous century. It was called a pulse net, a web of electromagnetic energy that would disable a ship without destroying it. The net spread across the path of the fleeing flagship, invisible until it was too late. The Valkyrie ship hit the net at full speed. Every system on board went dark. Engines died. Weapons fell silent. Life support flickered to emergency power. The mighty flagship drifted helplessly, a great beast brought down by a clever trap. Human boarding teams moved quickly. They had trained for this, breaching alien vessels and securing enemy combatants. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed for close combat. They expected fierce resistance. They found chaos instead. The Valkyrie crew was in disarray, stumbling through dark corridors, unable to understand how their ship had been disabled so completely. They had never needed to fight boarders before. Their prey had always surrendered long before this point. The humans did not surrender. They did not hesitate. They moved through the ship with brutal efficiency, neutralizing resistance and securing each section. They had been fighting wars against each other for 10,000 years. They knew exactly how to take a ship. Within an hour, the flagship was under human control. The Valkyrie commander and his senior officers were captured and restrained. The rest of the crew was locked in cargo holds, guarded by armed Marines. The battle was over. Admiral Chun arrived on the captured flagship to personally oversee the prisoners. She walked through corridors that were built for creatures much taller than humans, her boots echoing on the strange metal floors. The ship smelled wrong, a chemical scent that made her nose itch. She ignored it. The Valkyrie commander was held in what had been his own quarters. He was bound to a chair designed for human proportions, his long limbs folded awkwardly. His three eyes followed Admiral Chun as she entered the room. "You fought well," she said. "Better than I expected." The commander hissed at her, showing his teeth. "You are dead. All of you are dead. You do not understand what you have done. The Dominion will send 100 fleets to avenge us. Your world will burn. Your species will be erased." Admiral Chun pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. She studied his face, noting the patterns of his scales and the way his eyes moved independently of each other. "Tell me about the Dominion," she said. "I will tell you nothing. You will tell me everything." Admiral Chun's voice was patient, almost kind. "We have time. We have methods. And we have your entire crew to work with. Someone will talk. They always do." The commander fell silent. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his alien face. Admiral Chun leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about humanity. We have been at war with ourselves since before we could write. We have developed interrogation techniques over thousands of years. We have broken every type of enemy you can imagine. Fanatics, idealists, true believers. All of them talked eventually." She smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "You tried to enslave us. You tried to trick us with a fake distress call. You were going to take our families, our children, and work them to death in your mines. Do you think I will show you mercy after that?" The commander's scales paled. He had seen humans on their entertainment broadcasts. He had watched them forgive enemies and spare defeated foes. He had believed they were weak because of their compassion. Now he was looking at a human who had no compassion left for him. He was seeing the other side of humanity, the side that had survived ice ages and world wars and come out stronger. He was seeing the predator that had been hiding behind the gentle mask. "What do you want to know?" he asked quietly. Admiral Chun smiled again. This time, it almost reached her eyes. Everything. Start with the location of your homeworld. Outside the flagship, the surviving human ships gathered the wreckage of the Valkyrie fleet. They collected debris and data, recording everything for analysis. They sent transmissions back to Earth, reporting their victory and their losses. 12 humans had died in the battle. Their names were recorded with honor. Their families were notified. Their sacrifice was not forgotten, but humanity did not mourn for long. They had won a battle, but they understood that a war had just begun. Somewhere across the galaxy, a great empire had just lost a fleet. That empire would respond. That empire would seek revenge. Admiral Chun looked out at the stars from the bridge of her damaged ship. Earth was far away, just another point of light in the endless darkness. Her people had no idea what was coming. They had dreamed of peaceful first contact, of friendly aliens who would share knowledge and culture. Instead, they had found slavers, predators, monsters who wore the mask of victims to lure prey. But humanity had worn masks before. They had played the roles of sheep while hiding the wolves inside. And now the wolves were awake, and they were angry, and they were ready to hunt. The interrogation of the Valkyrie commander would continue. Information would be extracted. Plans would be made. And when humanity finally moved against the Dominion, they would not come as rescuers. They would come as judgment. Desak had been the intelligence officer of the Valkyrie fleet. He had personally planned the destruction of 11 civilizations. He had watched their ships arrive and answer the fake distress calls. He had smiled as they were surrounded and captured. He had overseen the processing of millions of slaves. Now he sat alone in a cold cell on a human ship, waiting to be interrogated. The humans had separated him from the other prisoners immediately. They had studied the captured Valkyrie crew and identified him as the most valuable source of information. They were efficient. They were organized. They were nothing like the entertainment broadcasts he had studied. The interrogation room was small and plain. White walls. A single table. 2 chairs. Nothing else. It was designed to be uncomfortable for a Valkyrie whose natural posture required more space. Desak had to fold his long body awkwardly just to fit. Admiral Chun entered the room and sat across from him. She placed a small device on the table, a translator that would convert her words to Valkyrie speech patterns. Behind her stood 2 guards, their faces blank and professional. "I am going to ask you questions," Admiral Chun said. "You are going to answer them. This is not a negotiation." Desak hissed softly. "I have information you want. That gives me power. You will bargain with me." "No." Admiral Chun shook her head. "You have information I will take from you. There is a difference. The only choice you have is whether the taking will be painful." She folded her hands on the table and studied him with dark eyes. "Let me explain your situation. We have captured your entire crew. 47 Valkyrie are now in our custody. We will interrogate all of them. We will compare their answers. We will find contradictions and lies. We will punish those contradictions." Desak felt a chill run down his spine. This was not how prey behaved. "Furthermore," Admiral Chun continued, "we have specialists arriving from Earth, psychologists who study alien minds, chemists who understand alien biology. They will develop new techniques specifically designed for Valkyrie physiology. They will learn what causes you pain. They will learn what causes you fear. They will learn how to break you." She leaned forward slightly. "You will tell us everything. The only variable is how much you suffer first." For a long moment, Desak was silent. He thought about the 11 civilizations he had helped destroy. He remembered how their leaders had sat in chairs like this one, begging for mercy, offering anything to save their people. He had enjoyed their desperation. He had savored their fear. Now he understood what they had felt. Now he was the one in the chair. "What do you want to know?" he asked. The interrogation lasted for days. Desak talked about the Dominion, its structure, its leadership, its military capabilities. He talked about the 47 civilizations that had been conquered, their names, and their fates. He talked about the location of the Velthari homeworld, the defenses around it, the weaknesses that might be exploited. Admiral Chun listened to everything. She recorded every word. She asked questions that revealed deep understanding of military strategy and political systems. She was not just gathering intelligence. She was building a complete picture of her enemy. On the third day, Desak finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "Why?" He said, "You came to help. You sent your rescuers. You were supposed to be soft. How can you be this way?" Admiral Chun considered the question for a moment. Then she spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. "Do you know how humanity survived its home world? Earth is what scientists call a death planet. The weather tries to kill us with storms and droughts. The ground tries to kill us with earthquakes and volcanoes. Disease tries to kill us constantly. Predators hunted us when we were young. We should have died 1,000 times." She paused. "But we did not die. We learned to fight back. We learned to work together. We developed tools and weapons and medicine. We became the most dangerous species on our planet. Then, you became weak," Desak said. "You made peace. You stopped fighting. You became soft." Admiral Chun laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Is that what you believe? Because we stopped fighting each other? Because we learned to cooperate?" She shook her head. "We did not stop being dangerous. We simply found new targets for our violence. We fought disease instead of each other. We fought ignorance instead of rival tribes. We turned our weapons against asteroids and climate change and entropy itself." She looked directly into his 3 eyes. "You made a mistake that many species make. You saw our kindness and thought it meant weakness. You saw our mercy and thought it meant we could not be cruel. But kindness and cruelty are not opposites for humans. They are choices. We choose to be kind when we can. We choose to be cruel when we must." She stood up and walked to the door. "You tried to enslave us. You tried to take our children. You made us choose cruelty. And now you will experience exactly how cruel humans can be." While the interrogations continued, Earth was preparing for war. The news of the Velthari attack had spread across the solar system. People reacted with shock, then anger, then cold determination. Humanity had reached out in friendship. They had sent ships to rescue what they thought were survivors. They had been betrayed. Factories that had been building colony ships switched to building weapons. Scientists who had been studying peaceful technologies began working on new ways to kill. Soldiers who had been training for peacekeeping missions started training for invasion. The United Earth Council declared that the Velthari Dominion was an enemy of all sentient life. They announced that humanity would not simply defend itself. They would strike back. They would find the Velthari homeworld. They would free every slave the Dominion had taken, and they would make sure no one ever tried to trap humanity again. But Admiral Chun had a larger vision. The intelligence from Desak revealed that 47 civilizations had been conquered by the Dominion. Some had been completely destroyed. Others had been reduced to slave populations, working in mines and factories across Velthari space. A few had hidden remnants, small groups that had escaped and were waiting in the darkness. Admiral Chun sent messages to these remnants. She offered them weapons. She offered them training. She offered them a chance for revenge. The responses came slowly at first. The survivors were cautious. They had seen their civilizations crushed. They had lost everything. They did not trust easily. But as word spread of humanity's victory over the Velthari fleet, more and more groups came forward. They shared what they knew about Dominion defenses. They volunteered fighters and ships. They wanted to see their oppressors fall. A coalition began to form. Humanity at its core, surrounded by the remnants of fallen civilizations. They called themselves the Liberation Fleet. Their target was the Valkyrie, homeworld. Desek learned of this coalition during one of his interrogation sessions. He could not believe what he was hearing. The conquered species were supposed to be broken. They were supposed to have given up. How could they be rising against the Dominion? You underestimated them, Admiral Chun said. Just as you underestimated us. You saw prey because you wanted to see prey. You never considered that prey might become predators. She smiled coldly. The Dominion taught the galaxy to fear. We are going to teach the galaxy to fight back. Desek finally understood. The Valkyrie had not just attacked humanity. They had awakened something that could not be put back to sleep. They had united their victims against them. They had created their own destruction. The Dominion has 300 warships, he said. You cannot defeat that. Admiral Chun nodded. We know. That is why we are bringing 800. She left him alone in his cell to think about what was coming. Outside, the Liberation Fleet continued to grow. Ships gathered from across the galaxy. Species that had never worked together before united against a common enemy. And at the center of it all, humanity led the way. The species that had been called soft. The species that had been called prey. The species that was about to show the galaxy what happened when you mistook their kindness for weakness. The reckoning was coming. And the Valkyrie were not ready. The Zara Prime was the jewel of the Valkyrie Dominion. It was a planet of towering cities and endless wealth, built on the labor of 47 conquered species. Its monuments celebrated Valkyrie superiority. Its museums displayed trophies from destroyed civilizations. Its citizens lived in luxury, served by slaves who had once been free. The planet was protected by 300 warships. The largest fleet in Valkyrie history. The Dominion's leaders believed it was unbreakable. They were wrong. The Liberation Fleet arrived on the first day of summer, emerging from fold space in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. 800 warships, painted in the colors of species that the Dominion had tried to erase. Humanity led the charge in sleek vessels of white and blue. Behind them came ships of every shape and size, crewed by survivors who had waited years for this moment. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the UES Retribution. It was larger than the Mercy, designed specifically for war. She looked at the tactical display showing the enemy fleet, 300 ships forming a defensive sphere around their homeworld. She felt nothing but cold determination. Open a channel to the Dominion, she ordered. Let them know who has come for them. Her message was broadcast across every frequency. It was heard on every ship in the Valkyrie fleet. It was heard on the surface of the Zara Prime, in palaces and slave quarters alike. I am Admiral Chun Wei-Lin of the United Earth Fleet, she said. I speak for the Liberation Coalition. We represent the species you conquered. We represent the civilizations you destroyed. We represent the billions you enslaved and murdered. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have two choices. Surrender unconditionally, release all slaves, and submit to trial for your crimes. Or resist and be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. The Dominion's response came in 15 minutes. It was a declaration of defiance. The Valkyrie would never surrender. They would crush these rebels as they had crushed so many others. They were the masters of the galaxy. Admiral Chun nodded when she heard the response. She had expected nothing else. All ships, she ordered. Begin the attack. The Battle of the Zara Prime lasted 6 days. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships engaged in a swirling chaos of weapons fire and explosions. Whole squadrons were destroyed in minutes. Heroes were made and killed in the same hour. The Valkyrie fought with everything they had. Their ships were powerful. Their crews were experienced. They had never lost a war in their entire history. They threw themselves at the Liberation fleet with desperate fury, but they were fighting an enemy that would not stop. Humanity had survived extinction events. The other species had survived the Dominion itself. They had all learned that some things were worth dying for. Freedom was one of them. The Liberation fleet pushed forward, taking terrible losses, but never retreating. Ship after ship broke through the Valkyrie defensive line. Fighters swarmed around enemy vessels, sacrificing themselves to create openings for the larger cruisers. Every destroyed coalition ship was avenged by 2 destroyed Valkyrie ships on the 3rd day. The Valkyrie commander ordered a retreat to the orbital defense platforms around the Zara Prime. His fleet had been cut in half. He hoped the platforms would provide enough firepower to turn the tide. Admiral Chen responded by sending drone swarms against the platforms while her capital ships engaged the remaining enemy fleet. The drones were not meant to destroy the platforms. They were meant to die in huge numbers, overwhelming the platform defenses and creating blind spots. Through those blind spots came the Liberation assault carriers, dropping landing craft toward the planet's surface. The ground war was even more brutal than the space battle. Valkyrie soldiers fought for every city block, every building, every room. They had grown soft from years of fighting only slaves and broken prisoners, but they still outnumbered the invaders and knew the terrain. What they did not know was that they were not just fighting soldiers. They were fighting former slaves who had been freed during the advance. Workers who had spent years in chains, suddenly given weapons and a chance for revenge. The Valkyrie had created their own enemies through cruelty, and now those enemies were everywhere. On the 5th day, the Valkyrie Senate building fell. The government leaders tried to escape in private ships, but the Liberation fleet was waiting. One by one, they were captured or destroyed. There would be no escape for the architects of slavery. On the 6th day, the last Valkyrie military commander surrendered. The war was over. Admiral Chen walked through the ruins of the capital city, stepping over rubble and ash. The sky was dark with smoke from burning buildings. The streets were filled with debris from falling ships. It was a scene of total destruction, but among the ruins, she saw something else. Former slaves emerging from hiding. Liberation soldiers distributing food and medicine. Medical teams treating the wounded, regardless of species. The chaos was slowly becoming order. A journalist from the coalition approached her. She was a small creature from one of the first species the Dominion had conquered, her people reduced to only a few thousand survivors. She had been recording everything, documenting the fall of the empire that had destroyed her world. "Admiral," she said, "how would you describe what humanity has done here?" Admiral Chen looked around at the devastation. She thought about the millions who had died in this war. She thought about the billions who had suffered under Dominion rule. She thought about the 47 civilizations that had been destroyed or enslaved. "We did what we had to do," she said. "Nothing more. Some will say you were too harsh, that you could have negotiated, that you did not need to destroy so completely." Admiral Chen shook her head. The Dominion never negotiated with the species they conquered. They used deception to trap them, then enslaved or murdered them. They had been doing this for centuries. How many more civilizations would have fallen if we had shown them mercy? She turned to face the journalist directly. "Mercy is for those who deserve it." The Dominion had a chance to surrender. They chose to fight. This is the consequence of that choice. So you have no regrets? Admiral Chen was silent for a long moment. "I regret that this was necessary. I regret every life lost on both sides. I wish that the Valkyrie had been what they pretended to be, a damaged ship full of survivors who needed help. I wish our first contact with alien life had been peaceful. She looked up at the smoke-filled sky. But the universe is not kind enough to give us what we wish. It only gives us choices. The Dominion chose to be predators. We chose to stop them. That is all. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. The Valkyrie Dominion was dissolved. Its leaders were tried for their crimes and punished. Its slaves were freed and helped to rebuild their civilizations. Its technology was shared with all species who wanted it. Humanity became the center of a new coalition, one based on mutual defense and cooperation. Species that had never trusted each other before found common ground through their shared experience of fighting the Dominion. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. The galaxy became a smaller, more connected place. But the galaxy also remembered what humanity had done. They remembered that the species who came to rescue had also come to destroy. They remembered that kindness and violence lived side by side in human hearts. A new phrase spread through the space lanes, passed from trader to soldier to diplomat. It became a warning and a comfort, depending on who heard it. Never deceive the humans. They will help their enemies. They will die for strangers. They will cross the void to save those who cannot save themselves. But lie to them, prey upon their kindness, and they will burn your empire to ash and salt the earth where it stood. In the Universal Archives, the Valkyrie were listed as functionally extinct. Their survivors were scattered across 100 worlds, forbidden from gathering in numbers, watched constantly by coalition observers. They would never threaten anyone again. Under the entry for cause of decline, a simple note was recorded. They asked humanity for help. Admiral Chun returned to Earth as a hero. Parades were held in her honor. Statues were built. Songs were written. But she refused most of the celebrations. She had done what was necessary, not what was glorious. She spent her remaining years teaching at the Fleet Academy, passing on everything she had learned about war and peace and the thin line between them. She taught her students that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology. Their greatest strength was their ability to be both kind and cruel, and to know when each was appropriate. The galaxy is full of predators, she would tell them, and it is full of prey. We choose to be neither. We choose to be human. That means we help those who need help, and we destroy those who would harm the innocent. She would look out at her students, young faces full of hope and uncertainty. Never forget that we carry both inside us, the hand that heals and the hand that kills. Use them wisely, and the galaxy will learn to respect us. Use them poorly, and we become no better than the Dominion. She died peacefully at the age of 97, surrounded by family and friends. Her last words were simple. We did good. Remember that. We did good. And across the galaxy, in 100 different languages, her species was remembered as the ones who had ended an empire of slavery.